Order at 7:02, this town council meeting on Tuesday, April 25th, 2023. Everyone would please rise to the pledge of allegiance, followed by a vote of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Be seated. Proclamations and presentations. We have one before us to read into the record. So as a proclamation honoring Leon H. Parker for 50 years of service to the town of Tolland. So whereas Leon H. Parker began serving the residents of Tolland, the Department of Public Works on May 28, 1973, first as a truck driver and later becoming equipment operator. And whereas Leon is a valuable employee of the town of Tolland, his vast knowledge, the Department of Public Works and the town itself has earned him the respect of his coworkers. And whereas these years of service have been marked by exemplary dedication to the best interests of the community. And whereas during Leon's career within the town of Tolland, there have been more than 2,000 winter storm events in which Leon has plowed approximately 333,440 miles of roadway, including 3 extreme blizzards in 1978, 1987, 13, as well as 4 powerful hurricanes, Gloria in 1985, Bob in 1991, Irene in 2011, and Sandy in 2012, and Tropical Storm Isaias. And whereas Leon is a lifelong resident of the town, and whereas Leon is the longest serving current employee of the town of Tolland and has faithfully and conscientiously served the town of Tolland. And whereas the town council believes that and finds that it is in the best interest of the town of Tolland and its citizens to recognize, honor, and thank Leon H. Parker for his service. Now therefore be it resolved by the town of Tolland that we hereby recognize and thank Leon H. Parker for his professional and personal dedication to the town of Tolland and its residents for the last 50 years. Dated at Tolland, Connecticut, this 25th day of April, 2023. So thank you, Mr. Parker, for your longstanding career and service to the town. It's definitely phenomenal and daunting to imagine that much work over a year period. All right, that brings us to item 6. Public hearing item 6.1 is a consideration of proposed revision to chapter 20, subsection 20-3 of the town code. Ordinance number 91, Tolland fire mitigation rates for fire and rescue. And with this thing, I believe we also have Chief Lytle on Zoom for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is, as discussed last week, typically, when fire services are provided, occasionally we bill out for those services. Those occasions are most notably on I-84. These mitigation rates have very little impact, if any, rarely on any of the residents of town. In order to facilitate the billing process, the policy and the actual, right down to the actual amounts, we use a service to do that. The service, who works with several other towns in Connecticut, has recommended that we raise our rates, and we haven't done so in quite some time when compared to other towns and how they do. And this is now an opportunity to amend our policy here on our rates. And Chief Lytle is here to answer any questions you may have.
Great, and thank you. Before I forget, I accidentally skipped over 5, which is public petitions, communication, and public participation. So I won't let you rehash all that, but just want to open it up to anyone that's on Zoom. You can hit *9 or the raise hand function, or if you're in the audience, you can approach the table and state your name and address for the record. George.
Oh, you can.
I didn't want to. I wasn't trying to snub you by skipping 5. I didn't mean to.
Well, I just wanted to point out George Overage, Fishing Game Road. I just wanted to point out, I noticed in tonight's journal, Vernon is having a 2.17 increase in their taxes. And their Grand List went up 2.7. So for the 5th year in a row, there's going to be no increase in the town of Vernon. Whereas Tolland's not like that. We need something to get industry into this town. I've been talking to people now that with my foundation problem, having people coming out and stuff. And one of the businessmen that I talked to said that he was going to increase his business, but it's just too expensive in town. He's going to do it in another town. I won't name who or where, but he's not, and he says he has a child in school right now And it's just too expensive, and even with him having a child in school, he is gonna vote no on the budget. He said he knows a lot of other people that are that way. And I'm not against school or any other kind of stuff. I want industry in here. Vernon has Route 30, Route 83, Ellington has 83. Coventry has 44. There's stuff going everywhere from Cumberland's, that's all kind of different stores going in every town. We need to take, like we heard 25 years ago is gonna happen. They were gonna widen 195 all the way up to stores. And we would have got that little town instead of that village they got in stores right now. We would have had all those nice stores, but everybody keeps turning everything down. And we can't keep doing that. If we want this town to grow at all, we want our schools or anything else to grow, we gotta get some industry in here, be it rest stops or be it trucking places or whatever, any kind of industry. We need something to raise our tax rate in this town because we have the highest tax rate of any town around here, percentage wise, for what the people pay versus the businesses. And that's just what I'd like to make aware of.
Thank you, George. Appreciate it. All right, is anybody on Zoom? I think I'll see one person outside of the usual folks, and that might actually bother being us about the changes name at some point, but. All right, seeing none, we'll bounce back to 6.1. So Brian did the summary. Before we open the hearing, are there any questions from council members for Chief Lytle or Brian? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
There's a second.
Second.
Councilor Murray, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. The hearing is now open. So anyone from the public that would like to speak on the proposed rate changes and the changes to chapter 20 are welcome to do so. All right, going once. Going twice. 3 times, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Murray, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Luba. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any further discussion?
I have a couple.
Councilor Murray.
First of all, thank you to the chief and to the town manager for putting together a pretty good packet here. I think it was easy to understand. I did want to know if the fee schedule is posted publicly somewhere. The current one, and then will the new one be posted publicly somewhere?
Chief? You're on.
There you
It is posted in our town ordinances. It is in the charter books, so this new one would obviously take place of it. And then we would just make changes when they come back, probably several years later when they change it again. So this is the first time that we've had a change from them since we've signed up with them, I think since 2017.
And speaking of changes, I know when we saw this 2 weeks ago, Councilor Luba pointed out that this the current changes allow for public safety to make updates as necessary going forward. I was just wondering how those updates would be communicated. Is there a plan to make sure that the town manager is aware of the updates and that information gets transmitted onto council, or how would that logistically work?
Anything from a contract level service has to go to the town manager first, and then it's taken from there.
Contract level service?
Yeah, if I would communicate that in the form of my town manager's report, just to make sure that we're being responsible. And that the prices aren't going out of control. John knows I keep things pretty close.
Yeah.
And he's great about keeping me informed too, so that. This is just to save it, should we have to do it again, from going to council, as this has very little impact, if any, on any town resident, unless they do something nefarious.
Sure. Sure, no, and I appreciate that information. I think we just want to make sure we're aware of,
There's some controls on it.
or at least some knowledge,
Yeah.
right? Like the information gets transmitted somehow. So thank you. those were my only questions.
All right, thank you, Council Murray.
I just have-
Councilor Luba?
And I just have an inquiry, it's showing that we're signed out.
Yeah, I believe someone switched over for the Zoom hosting. I think we're all set. It's still recording and we're all good.
Okay, just want to check, make sure.
Yeah, I noticed that and I immediately saw someone pop on that logged in.
Sorry, gang, it's Lisa. I took control so I can control to let people in and stuff.
Okay, no worries, Lisa. Thank you.
No, I have no questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Luba. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve the resolution as outlined in 6.1.
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous, so we'll move on to 7A, reports of boards and committees responsible for council. Firehouse Subcommittee met last Thursday. We got a general update and actually got a communication this afternoon to myself, Councilor Luba and Mr. Foley that the building permit for Fire Station 340 has been issued, so they are moving forward and are on time, on budget. And we had a quick update, just went over the financials and the status of the project, and I think everything is moving forward to being completed by about, I think, March, maybe a little bit earlier, 2024. So that is it for us. ARPA subcommittee.
Yeah, so we're gonna have a meeting this Thursday, but we postpone it, just remember short, so if we need a special meeting, we'll have it. Otherwise, it'll just be a regular May date, but I just wanted to say some of the things that we were gonna talk about. There's a Tolland soccer league, the letting that request, the Tolland Veterans Commission, consideration for funding, and then the Tolland Boy Scouts request for the gazebo at Randall Park, so just wanna let you know that's we have the next May or next month.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 7B, reports of town council liaisons, and I'll start from my left with Councilor Murray.
I did not attend the Historic District Commission meeting last week as I was here with you wonderful people.
Okay. All right, Councilor Khan.
I don't have one.
All right, Vice Chair Egan.
I have two. WPCA met on April 18th, and there was an issue with the old Post Road pump station. Blake Equipment came out and did a repair on that. Other than that, the other pump stations are in good working order. There was a discussion about the Vernon connection charges, and those are going to increase based on current CPI. And then there was discussion about the compatibility of the software between Tolland and Vernon, and they're working through that right now. And they did approve their budget with no increase. And there was a new connection at 45 Woodside Drive off Old Post Road. And that was it for WPCA. Planning and zoning met last night. They held a public hearing and they held an extensive discussion about alternative energy in the form of solar. And the solar arrays was the topic of that discussion, and the height that those solar arrays can be set. So they're talking about raising the height from, I believe it was 28 feet to adding another 5 feet, so they can capture more energy that way. And that was quite an extensive discussion. And then they set 3 items for public hearing. Number 1 was to request a zone change for 127, 129, 131 Tolland State Road from CCZ to CIZ-A. That public hearing is set for May 8th. Number 2 was 94 Goose Lane. There will be a public hearing also on May 8th to talk about 2-lot subdivision on 27 acres. And then the third one, 351 Goose Lane. There'll be a public hearing to allow for on-site consumption of alcoholic cider produced on site. And that one will take place on May 22nd. And that was it for planning and zoning. That's it for me.
Thank you, Vice Chair Egan. I had 2 meetings, the April 13th Conservation Commission. They welcomed one new member that was switched over from an alternate commissioner position, and 1 new member, Kylie Ackerman. They discussed the Stoppelworth property, Joshua's Trust, forest management bids for RCX property. And they discussed their Earth Day events, which obviously have been concluded. They were doing stenciling around, I believe, Kate Lane and a few other neighborhoods to encourage people not to dump into those drains that lead to waterways. And then on these, annual sort of conservation, they keep doing the women's hike group. They've had some success there. They are considering entering the scarecrow contest in the fall, and so they're also doing additional activities with the library and other groups to promote conservation, so. And then on the 17th, the Water Commission met. They just had a discussion regarding tank cleaning, water production values in Victoria Road system, and other discussions regarding the water system. So they're hoping to get some information from Connecticut Water regarding some information requests. And that is it for me. Councilor Lehman.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. VRC met last Thursday. I was unable to attend based upon work commitments. I would refer anyone to the minutes from the VRC.
All right, thank you. Councilman check.
Yes, so Commission of People with Disabilities met last week. They're like, I was always here, so back me up or say anything I might have missed. Let me just go back up to those notes there. So a couple members have mentioned that there was an Easter egg hunt in the Girl Scouts, and the Public Works Department made it available, so people that need ADA accessibility, they made it available for them by using traffic cones to put eggs on. So that was really a good thing and much appreciated by the committee. And then there was a lot of discussion about two House bills going on. House Bill 001 and 663 and 6630. Is that right? Or yeah, 5001. I'm sorry, 5001. 63630. I can tell you what those are. If anybody is really interested in them. But one is talking about SDC and being able to give them a little bit more income, and the other one is a resource to support services with people with intellectual disability. Also was brought up during that meeting, a possible use of some ARPA funds for the Crandall Park Beach, like the one we have at the green that has the mat. So people with that need ADA accessibility can use it. So I think that
Perhaps purchasing a second.
second one, so I don't know, I think you gotta look into it, I don't know, it's kind of, but that's should be coming, I think, to the subcommittee, which is a great asset to the community as well. I think that's it. If I missed anything, I don't think I did.
Okay,
Yeah, okay.
thank you, Councilman Vidchek. That'll bring us to item 8.1. Presentation and discussion of proposed revisions to ordinance 60, aka the Tolland Tax Relief Program for permanently disabled and senior residents. And we have with us tonight Beth Bellady from Human Services, Jason Lawrence from the Assessor's Office, and Mr. Bob Rubino, all around Renaissance man. Thanks.
All right.
Can we sit at the table? So.
Yeah, no, please, you can approach the table.
So in 2000, we had this tax relief program for our seniors in town was brought about. And in 2007, it was revised. And back then, the plan was to consider revisions every 5 years. That sort of fell by the wayside. However, at council's request and considering the need to make the use of this program more robust, I enlisted the help of our assessor, Jason, and Mr. Rubino, and Beth Bellady as well. But I did, before we move, I just, I think I can speak for all of us that I understand how difficult this might be for some of us to be here. We really appreciate during this time coming here and offering your time as a resident to us here. So very sorry. And, we're ready to proceed. The program was convoluted before. And certainly it's been made a lot simpler to even I can understand. So we're in a good place. So we're ready to move forward.
With that, I'll open the floor to Mr. Rubino and Mr. Lawrence and Bellady if they want to add any commentary or go to the presentation. Actually, Brian or Lisa, are we able to share on our screen the presentation or the packet to help people kind of remotely check it out? Yeah. Let's start on page 22. Let's go.
And now let's share all my eyes and all on here.
So you want to go over to the right, where Lisa's name is.
Okay, yeah, green arrow, I'll find it.
There you go. And then you can share screen. Off the left, middle green.
Thank you, sir.
Remember? And then, yep, there you go.
Proceed.
All right.
So I wasn't here in 2000, but Bob was, and helped out design this, initial program with Bev and my father, the previous assessor, and several others that were, here at the time. The ordinance was written up to be, for this program to be reviewed every 5 years or the year after the revaluation. So we've done that. It was moving along smoothly until 2019, when we had a couple glitches and people were getting large reductions in their taxes, which brought attention to, when it was leaving my office and going to the tax office, something was happening behind the scenes. So we took a deeper dive into what was going on and found that it was almost impossible to recreate what people's taxes should have been, because it's a tax freeze on top of veterans exemptions and disability exemption. All kinds of things were playing a role that weren't anticipated when the program was first put together. So it kept getting kicked down the road. So we got Bob on board, who would help facilitate some of the changes that we're trying to make now. And what we want to present to you tonight is what we found and some of that investigation, and with Bev's help as well, getting some numbers together. So with that, I'll let Bob kind of give you a little bit of.
Okay, so if we go to the next slide.
Sorry.
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 Here's my projectionist.
There you go.
Yes.
Multi-talent.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, don't judge yet.
You know, 23 years ago, we were perhaps a little naive. We thought one of the simplest ways to provide tax relief for seniors and the permanently disabled was to institute a tax freeze. Simple enough. Upon 65, as a qualifying senior with a certain income level, you would pay the same amount of tax for the rest of your life in town. Turns out there are quite a few moving wheels in this process of calculating your tax. Your tax is based on two things, principally: the valuation of your home and the mill rate. The valuation of your home has a lot to do with, are you making improvements to your home? Are you maintaining your home? Are you repairing your home? When your home has a leak in the roof and you put a new roof on your home, the appraisal of your home goes up. How do you base a tax freeze on that? And I'll cut to the chase. I was wrong. This was not a simple calculation, nor can it be, because in addition to all of this, there are deductions for being a veteran. There are deductions for being blind. There are deductions from the state circuit breaker program. All of this has to be calculated. And at the end of the year, when the voters approve a referenda and you guys set a mill rate, Jason's office now has to spend about 40 hours calculating the effect of that tax that percolates through this entire Ordinance 60 program. Calculations on right now, 155 participants. So there's a hidden cost to this simple tax freeze. Just on that calculation, I don't know what your burden rate is, but you're spending about $2,000 of money that would probably be better spent in providing benefit to the qualifying participants. Not to mention all of the conversation that Jason has to have with people applying, where they ask, well, what is my benefit? And this is where you must be Italian because you talk with your hands. That's not a very easy calculation. So back in 2000, naive, there were 600 senior households in Tolland. Today, based on the numbers that Bev has provided from the census and Hopkins, that number is almost triple. At the time, back in 2000, we couldn't play Santa Claus for every senior. We decided to maximize benefit for those most in need. We decided to set a income level that represented the bottom third of that population. So we were targeting about 200 households. And today, that number is between 500 and 600 households. But only 155 households are participating. So something is wrong. I think one of you had pointed out, why is the program decreasing in its cost? It used to be around 200,000. Now it's around 155. We know house values have appreciated. Why are we losing participation?
Recording stopped.
Crash.
Oh,
Speaker A is speaking too much.
yes.
You don't need to agree so quickly.
Lisa, your equipment crashed? Okay.
All right, should we take a quick recess while we wait for the recording to? All right, I'll entertain a motion to enter into a 5-10-minute recess while the recording clerk gets the recording up and running.
So move.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, so we are.
Recording in progress.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are back in session at 7:30.
Great. So I was explaining that the program is underperforming with participation and cost. I'll cut to the chase. At the end of this, Jason and I are going to recommend a revamp, a tweak to this program that would result in an increase in program spend of about $42,000. The program is capped at 0.5% of operating budget. Your operating budget this year is about 60 million, 0.5% is 300,000. At that 42,000 extra, the penetration of the cap would be about a little more than 2/3. One of the last things we want to do is set up a program by making some tweaks that only causes it to go bankrupt some years down the road. People who are receiving a benefit, that would be a bad day. Right?
Yeah.
You're getting a benefit, your fax is frozen, and then all of a sudden, the program goes belly up. We want to avoid that. Let's go to slide 2. Part of the reason that the tax freeze program doesn't work is an error in assumption. Last time Jason and I were speaking to you last March, one of your members said something to the effect of, you're proposing a program that after 20 years only gives me $2,000. And I know that I live in a home where property after 25 years is doubled in value. I know my taxes haven't increased by 2,000, gone up way more. Well, there's a couple of issues. We're talking about people who participate in this program are of modest means. They're living in modest homes. And it's a double whammy. This chart, the top chart, the data provided by the good folks at Zillow, show that for the average home in Tolland, the homes appreciate about 2.5% per year. Using the rule of 72 divided by 2.5 means that in about 25, 30 years, those home values will double. And that marries up with what one of you observed in your own personal circumstance. But here's where it gets dicey. When you're living in a modest home and you're not making the repairs, it doesn't appreciate. When we did a deep dive on some of the program participants, we actually saw that their benefit actually went down. The valuation of their homes decreased over 23 years of program participation. So if you're making a program that has its benefit pinned at both mill rate and appreciation of value, you're doing a disservice to these people who are most at risk. Tax freeze does not serve them well. In fact, the average appreciation of homes in this group is about 2/3 that of the average, about 1.6%. So let's look at the next slide. So all the blue dots are the 155 program participants and the benefit that they're getting on the left and the number of years that they've been in the program. You'll see some of the dots are quite high. Now, I didn't do a deep dive on that to show you, but I can pretty much tell you that those high value properties are enjoyed by people who have money to improve them or repair them. Look at the bottom right. Look at the number of homes where the value, or actually in this case, the benefit is flat. In some cases, it's less than when they enter. And that's because they weren't able to make the improvements. And their valuation of their home is actually less than it was when they started. So if you draw a straight line through that, you would see that the average participant has a benefit at year one of about $70 and $70 additional for every year in the program. So if you just wanted to say, well, let's just replace this with a simple $70 upon entry and $70 for every year thereafter, half of the group would be really happy. The other half of the group would not be happy. Next slide. I'm not going to talk too much about this one, but it's more data from Zillow to explain one of the issues in Tolland is that since 2008, maybe the next chart might show it better, but the home appreciation was actually very flat from 2008 up until very recently. So as a town council, if your grand list isn't growing, how do you support increased spending as a result of inflation? You have to increase the mill rate. That's the only lever you guys got. So again, for those people who are getting a benefit pegged at a tax freeze, for those past 12 years, they weren't getting a benefit. And I think that explains in part why you saw a decrease in program participation. This chart says, okay, what if we came up with a stepped program that says we're going to try and mimic a tax freeze as if everybody was able to improve their home? And we're going to mimic it with the idea that for every year in the program, you get $100. And at the beginning, you get a $200 or $250. So Jason can now explain that after 10 years, your total benefit will be $1,250, $250 plus 10 times $100 per year. Simple. Everybody can figure that out. They can punch that in their calculator. There's no magic. Now, some of this is gonna be that during those flat years, people will get an increased benefit that maybe you might argue they didn't earn. And on those years when the market goes crazy, some of you might argue, well, that benefit is actually undershooting what the market is doing. But we're not really worried about year to year. We're worried about the long haul. Most of the program participants are in these homes for their life, the rest of their life. Poor old people are not moving to Tolland. All right, they're here, they're stuck here. This is their nest egg. So you have to look at this over the long haul. I'm not sure it wound up in your packet or not, but Jason and I shared with you a spreadsheet where you can do your own what if. You can plug in your own starting program value and appreciation for every year, and you can see the impact to the total program cost. That's for you guys to decide. It also tells you how many people currently in the program would be underserved. And for those people, you would maybe have to say they're grandfathered and work by exception. But an Excel spreadsheet has quite a few different tabs in it. It's got the Hopkins economic data, the census data. You guys can poke around in that. By doing it this way, I think we also address the other issue, the is it worth it issue. If somebody came to you and said, well, what's my benefit? And you say, well, I'm not sure. Well, what's my benefit going to be next year? Well, it depends what the mill rate is. And you can't really tell them what the benefit will be. They'll say it's not worth my sharing with you all of the financial information to see if I qualify. So when you look at this chart, the income distribution of people participating, and I told you that the bottom third of the town earns between $10,000 and $50,000. And on the right of this chart is $75,000. And the next third of the town earns from $50,000 to $100,000 a year. And the last third is $100,000 and more. Something should pop out at you with this chart. Why does it get truncated on the right? There should be a very sharp drop off. And in this case, what we're seeing, I think, is a vestige of the not worth it. People are comfortable enough, maybe they're not participating because the benefit is so murky. Let's go to the next chart. So the green curve represents the data that Bev provided from us, what we believe the income distribution is. And if you made this program such that it's clear for more people to see that it is worth it, those red columns represents the added number of people that would participate in the program. So I guess in this chart, I'm saying, with caution, you do not change the qualifying income level. And just to give you some numbers, if 50% more people jumped into the program, it's a stepped program, we would pretty much be close to cap in 10 years. So I think that's our recommendation, is that I think we've shown that the tax freeze fails and that it's not giving the most benefit to those most in need. It's an administrative nightmare to manage. It's very difficult to forecast what the program is going to cost. Very difficult for you as the council to know how much do I need to budget. And it's a lose from the ability to tell people very simply, what is the benefit? So that's our recommendation, is adopt a step benefit. You guys can toy around with it and figure out the program cost.
And then I think the last slide is to have the proposed entry benefit, and it's kind of a breakout of years participation, number of participants, and additional.
That's the what if slide
Yeah.
that Bob mentioned that, it's obviously not, editable in this form, but that's the form that we use to run through all different types of scenarios, that for total cost for the program. Currently, what happens is if somebody comes in with an application, we tell them about the circuit breaker program, we tell them about, which is the state program, we tell them about the freeze program. And we have to say, well, we're not sure what the benefit is. So people are reluctant to give you their income, tell you everything about them because they hold it close to themselves, what they've made and what their retirement looks like. And some people are embarrassed, and we ask some tough questions sometimes to those people. So then to say, well, your taxes shouldn't change next year, because we use the previous year's tax amount to determine what your taxes will be frozen. However, now that you've been in our office, are you a veteran? Do you know, is your husband or wife a veteran? Or what else do you qualify for? So then all these exemptions start piling on top, which changes things. If you have excess land, that's taxed at the current mill rate, not at the frozen mill rate. So in order to track that tax change, it's hard to do just simply based on that fact alone. So if we're taxing you at $6,000 per acre for excess land, and that mill rate keeps changing every year, you have to go in and do that calculation every time to determine if it's still right. So to do that in that 1 week after you guys, or the town votes on the mill rate, for us to generate these numbers and then check it against last year's number is really difficult to do within that 1 week's time. This step benefit really, we feel fixes all the problems, allows us to give a credit that's very similar, looking at 20 years of data to what people are getting now, and allows for an increased benefit every year when right now the freeze, if the mill rate doesn't change and your assessment doesn't change, there's no benefit. Doesn't change from last year. Your taxes stay the same. There's no, cost of living has gone up, but your taxes are still the same as they were. So this would allow you to have, it's only $100, but $100 helps everybody. And over the course of those 20 years, it turns into a pretty good program. So just the ease of being able to tell somebody what that would be, budget for it, be able to tell Lisa exactly what that cost is going to be before you guys are in this process, even though we take applications through May 15th. And then the administration alone of it it's just a win-win, which is why I think the state went away with a freeze years ago and used this circuit breaker, which is just a same thing as a simple benefit.
Thank you, Jason. I'll open the floor to questions from council members. Councilor Ray.
So just to make sure we're on the same page here. Someone who has been a participant in the program for 2 years or 20 years. Are you proposing that we make sure that they're not losing any benefit if we change the program?
Yeah, so we would grandfather anybody who was 28 properties, I think, people that were that would have been affected, that were above the mark. And everybody that was below, we would bring them up to whatever that calculation was. So those people would have increased, whereas the people above, we were gonna just grandfather them at the benefit they're currently getting.
Okay, and then going forward, it would be an additional $100 a year
Yep.
for everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
And that explains why the program would see an immediate jump of cost of 42,000, bring the folks that are below the curve up to the curve.
Great, thank you. I do want to thank you, Steve, for getting us a copy of the application. I know that was something that one of our colleagues had asked for in the past, and it's great to be able to see what our residents are seeing too. What about for people who are living in Tolland 5.5 months out of the year and living maybe out of state, you know, they have multiple properties or they're not full-time residents here. Are we able to account for that?
No, it's specifically set up that they have to pay taxes here and be a full year member, for majority of the year, with residents here.
What about people who might have more than one house? Like we had someone come recently talk to us about, they had multiple properties.
Yep. There's an asset test, so you'll be excluded from the program if you're over 10 times the income level. So this year is 7,550, so it'd be 705,000. Your properties would have to be less than that amount.
Okay. And this would, just to clarify, because I believe you said this, but this would still allow for other types of benefits that might be available to some of our residents, like circuit breaker, like veterans benefits. This would allow for someone who might have multiple qualifications to qualify for multiple programs, right?
Yeah, so if anybody comes in, say they come in and they've heard about the circuit breaker program, we check their income, obviously, and if they're under the freeze program amount, then we say, hey, you also qualify for this. That's why the defined benefit is so much easier, because now you're just adding on top. You just keep adding, you're taking off of their tax bill, versus trying to do the calculation and then add all these other things on top. So the veterans exemption is an amount off your assessment. So that's easy enough. But when you're trying to freeze that assessment, but then take off 10,000, it becomes, that's where the nightmare comes in. But this will allow people to apply for everything still, no change in that. They can still get the deferral, which is the same, one of the 3 programs that we offer as well.
Great. And if someone who is income qualified and age qualified moved into town tomorrow, when would they be able to qualify for this program?
So next year, so they have to have 1 year ownership and
Okay,
residency, so within that year. So
Okay.
as of this time next year, they can apply. They have until May 15th. But you have to be owner as of October 1st. So it would be, this October would qualify them for next year.
okay. And if I walked into the tax office on July 17th, that's outside of the application window. Are you still accepting applications for next year?
No, we don't. We start accepting them February 1st.
Okay.
So we don't, we revise the application every year, and we don't do that until we're done with the grand list, and we now have time to focus on the application period for this.
And do you resend applications every year to participants?
Every other year.
Every other
Yeah,
year?
yeah.
And so if somebody walked in the middle of the year, would you add them to the list to send an
Yeah,
application the
Yeah,
next
so you
year?
pick a name, we have a running log of who to contact when, email it or mail it, however they want to do it. During COVID, we had 2 years with executive order where the governor allowed everybody just to pass through. So we didn't accept applications for 2 years. New applicants could come in, but there was no re-apps. So that kind of caused a lot of trouble for us. Last year, we had 110 applicants, and this year we have 26 or something like that. So that are re-upping. So it should be 50-50.
Yeah.
It's kind of thrown out of whack a little bit, but it's okay. Yeah. Yeah, we make sure nobody gets missed.
Okay.
And then what's in place is a appeal process. They go from Brian if they don't like what we have to say, or they've missed it by a day or something. He has a little leeway to.
Jason office will also contact us if people aren't returning the application.
Yeah.
We might know that, so they give us a list and then we go track them down and, and a lot of them have just forgotten or they didn't need help with it, so we work together on that.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And then the last question I have is more of a bigger picture. It's about making sure that any resident who might qualify is given the opportunity to apply. And I think that's a kind of a bigger picture issue that we started some conversations about last time we talked about this, is how do we make sure that all households that could qualify, know about the program and might apply. And I think it would be really great to hear from residents to better understand how we can communicate this information with them, because I think we got some information on like how much it would cost to kind of send a mailing out, right? Is
Yeah,
that
it was
something-
about $1,300, I think was Jason's response for the cost.
Just based on our numbers of
Yeah.
1,700
Right.
estimated houses that we would have to contact, and we'd be better served probably by going to the senior center, explaining the program, having a little presentation, maybe once a year at least, and you know, that's, I don't know, 40, 50 people in the senior center roughly, so if they tell two friends, if they tell two friends.
Sure, absolutely.
So, but I mean, could do a mailing. I'm sure a postcard would be cheaper, but
What about Jason, excuse me,
Yeah,
what about we sent out tax bill, right?
Yeah.
What about putting a piece of paper in there saying, hey, next year you may be eligible for,
there,
that would be, and that couldn't be that expensive.
I wouldn't imagine, we'd have to ask Michelle. I'm not sure what, but I know that other towns have notes on their bottom of the bill or an insert.
Yeah.
So there's,
I would do that.
the problem is with knowing, you don't have software that tracks people's age. So the voters office says, so we could merge that somehow to create a spreadsheet that said, hey, for these certain parcels, let them know that there's this program that exists.
Great, yeah.
To do something.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to thank both of you for all the work that went into this. I know, this is something I've heard you talk about for a number of years. So thank you for bringing it to us in a new, ready to use, application that might be a little bit easier from an administrative point of view, as well as for the residents to understand. Thank you.
I think you're welcome. Councilman Reagan answered part of my question last, or asked part of my question, but is the February 1st to May 15th timeline the most prudent time period for you to accept applications?
By statute, that's,
Yeah,
it's part of the statute. That's when that's the period. That's plenty of time, and we're done with the grand list by then. So if you get an extension, then it extends that period.
Oh.
So.
And that's during the time period, people have their taxes prepared if they do them too. so
Yeah.
they're-
everybody has taxes on the mind.
It also helps them,
Yeah,
it also ensures that they're getting their taxes done, so they come in and they say, what do we need? And the first thing we say is, did you file taxes this year, or do you need to? Some of these people's income is so low that they don't file taxes anymore. And then we have to say, okay, well, we need your 1099s, we need social security, we need interest, all those things. So it kind of gets them, oh yeah, it's tax season.
Yeah.
So sometimes it may help them that way. It's easier for us to have a tax return than it is to gather all the documents together for them.
yeah. And I know a lot of the questions they sent over and forwarded to the council, and I'll forward to Lisa for the minutes as well, have to do with the marketing and outreach. And I know there's some great answers from Reba and Kim that, it goes in the March newsletter, a full page ad. It sounds like there's some discussions possibly once we go through the process and if we adopt these changes, that there could be an annual presentation that was done previously by Jason or by the assessor. That would be great. And I think you also mentioned, Bev, that you let the caregivers and family members know. So if they're senior elderly and maybe aren't as mobile or not getting out as much, that they can be made aware to let their, parent or whoever's taking care of them know how to apply and help them through the process and kind of serve as an intermediary.
Like most of our programs would do that. This one has always been so complicated to explain. So you're asking people to apply for something, give all their documentation, and you're saying, well, I don't know what you'll get.
Yeah,
And that's kind of what we've always had to answer. We don't know, but there could be better marketing ways, and I'm open to working on that too.
yeah, no, and I think the other thing was I think I asked about if the disability commission does any work, but you said that resident with disabilities who share information, it's on the assessor's website and can add a link to the human services and disability page to redirect them to the assessor's office. So they might be able to know or if they qualify for that. So, but no, thank you. I appreciate the presentation. It was very clear information. It was a great reading. Bob, you present as always phenomenally. So I'll open the floor to other questions. Councilor Puccio?
First and foremost, Bob, I'm very, very sorry for the loss of your father. My sympathies.
I've learned quite a bit in the past couple. Number one is, Getting old is not for sissies.
It's not. Only for the, not for the faint of heart.
What do you got?
So I read through the information and I don't know if you may have covered this before I walked in. Sorry for my lateness. But I'm wondering how this plan compares to the benefits that people are already seeing, because as you and I have talked about many times in the past, my concern is any change in the plan that would lower the benefit, right, for the few amount of people who are on it, or more importantly, as we have all the pressures of the taxes going forward and that, making it, as you said, you know, a plan that's gonna be worth the while to get people to come out and apply for it. So I'm just wondering, with the $100 step, $250 start and $100 step, how does that compare to the tax break that people are currently seeing in the same populace?
Well, you know, Tammy, when we put this together, your comments from last March kind of resonated in the back of my mind as to how do we reconcile this with some of our own personal anecdotal observation. And I would direct your attention to chart 3 and to.
You saw me asking this question.
No. I mean, I was very concerned that we had missed something.
Mhm.
The chart 3 talks about the average appreciation of real estate in Tolland was 2.5% year over year. I suspect that's probably the group that all of us in this room are in. The program participants, however, are not so fortunate. Modest homes do not appreciate the way the average homes do. Modest homes that are not being repaired and maintained, many of them don't appreciate at all. It's for that reason that there's a really good house flipping market in Tolland. I mean, we've all walked around, we all can point to a home on our block. Maybe it's got blight. Maybe the person moved out and somebody moved in and did a complete, rental on it. Those are the people.
Putting down right now for mine.
And that's great for the town, not so great perhaps for the person in the house. So I think the bottom line is, your worry is, are we proposing the STEP program less of a benefit? I think what we've shown here, for the exception of maybe something less than 15%, 85% of the people in the STEP program will get more money. And those 15%, those 30 households, would get less, but they would be grandfathered in until such time as the STEP program would catch up.
Okay, so they'd be stable right now.
Right, everybody would be whole.
Yeah.
And then some.
Okay, and the benefit for people coming in would have stability of knowing what it's gonna change, but in the $250 to start plus the 100 every year, that is off the total tax bill, or that's not, has nothing to do with like the appreciated value of the home or the net value of the home. It's just, this is what the taxes would be. We're gonna take 250 off. Next year it's gonna be 350, 450, et cetera.
Yep.
In a progressive way. So as they're in the program longer, it will continue to grow. And is there a max on it?
Yeah, we would keep the same max. To answer your first question, yeah, it's basically a discount off your tax bill. So it's a so to speak.
I like the fun.
Yeah.
The poor kid in me, I still like coupons. I like it when they double it too, so there's always that.
We won't be doing that.
Come on Wednesdays, just for seniors.
But it mimicked basically what people were already getting, and then some.
Okay,
Without going crazy, with we were at 67% of our cap. We don't intend on changing any of the rules or regulations of it, other than it's not based off the assessment, it's based off of how many years you've been in the program. Definitely not trying to take anything away from anybody. There's plenty of room in there for this to grow, maybe not this year because of the cost of it, but
I would argue there's things coming up people to assume that.
well. But this was our best bet to come up with a change to the program that would benefit more seniors, give everybody more of an idea of what they're getting and make it easier on our office to convert in a quick manner.
Okay. That was my concern, so thank you. Very nice.
Yeah, so Tammy, the number 250 and 100 is not written in stone. I think each of you have the ability to take in this Excel spreadsheet that's in your packet and noodle the numbers. I would caution you, at the 250, the entry is the number that gets more people to participate. It makes it worth it for them to share their income. But the real cost driver in this program, you have to look down the road.
Yeah.
The average tenure is around 10 years,
10 years out.
right? So if you're adding 150 every year, after 10 years, it's $1,500 per participant. That's the one you gotta watch. And earlier we said that, you know, the last thing we want to do is set up a program that's so rich it becomes bankrupt after a few years.
So I guess my next question would be, and this is definitely more a you question, Jason, is what is the average value of the home or the average tax bill that we're seeing in the senior citizen populace? Because as you mentioned, no, they're not living in the McMansions. They're not living in, you know, the 3,500 colonials. They're living in capes, one level ranches, maybe a raised ranch if you're lucky. So I know I live in a 1966 raised ranch, and I think my tax bill is about $7,000 a year. So what's the average home value for the senior populace? Where, like you said, in 10 years, if it's $1,500, what percentage of that of the average tax bill as our non-double coupon?
You have that in one of your tabs for sure.
Yeah, in the Excel spreadsheet, we can easily tease it out for you, but you can also kind of see it in slide 4. Well, maybe not, I'm sorry. It's in the Excel spreadsheet, but I thought the mean valuation or the mean tax bill was about $4,000 or something like that. These are modest homes.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds very reasonable.
So if it was a $4,000 tax bill, we're right now at 1,500, you know, it's a really good amount.
Yeah, the program's capped at 75% of your taxes. So at that point, you'll either stop or it'll, or if we reach the cap of the overall cost of the program, then it's prorated throughout the rest of the applicants. So we really only can go to that, whatever 0.5% of the budget is. So really, I don't think it would ever really cost out. You just would reach the end of it, and then you have to determine if you want to extend the cap at some point, if we ever got there. But in 20 years, 23 years now of this program, I don't think we've ever.
We've always been significantly, under. We've always been significant. We've never had to come anywhere near the cap.
Yep.
So your projection is the $42,000 would be if we had maximum applicants, or the $4,200 is with the current populace plus X%.
The 42
Or
is,
2,000,
yeah,
sorry.
our current cost at 209,000, I think the number was.
49935.
Yeah, that's what we have budgeted as part of Lisa's trend analysis for this program was what's the difference?
Okay.
Did we also anticipate a 25% increase in program participation?
We didn't, but in year 1, which is right now, you've got 2 weeks of applications that are still possibly to come in. I think in Steve, my answer to you, I give you a number. We only have 6 new applicants this year.
Yeah. That's
So-
an easy question, but yeah.
Yeah. So I don't expect doors to come crashing down with people running in to apply, but
Well, in all fairness, though, you know, depending on how quickly we were to vote to make the change, I would ask that we maybe build in a window of a month where people could come. Is that doable to say we're gonna extend by a month from the time that it passes so people could apply, or do we have a hard, fast date for applicants that they
I
would
have to
miss?
double check, but it's in state statute, the cutoff on that, because it's the same for the circuit breaker, which is the state program.
And we're tied to the state dates.
That's how it's written.
Yeah, and I think at least from a process standpoint, if we were to move forward, you'd have to put it on the next, it would be the fastest we could probably do, we'd have to set the public hearing at our first May meeting, which I believe is the 9th. And then the 23rd would be, yeah, May 23rd would be the hearing, so that would be effective. I think the goal long term was to try and have this done before July 1 for the fiscal year.
So that would be
Close.
well past the deadline though.
Yeah.
Or needed.
I think the 17th was the May 15th or 17th.
And we got to find $42,000. Correct.
Possibly.
Oh my gosh, I should do that. But beyond that,
But the good news is it would give us the rest of this calendar year to get the word out to our residents. It would allow for tax bill inserts information to happen. And for us to be up and running and fully, hopefully, really well budgeted for in the next budget.
Yeah,
do we have the capacity to, Bev, do we have the capacity to get something out to try to get more people to even just throw their hat in the ring in the next 2 weeks? So they can at least have their name on an application process. So if this passes, they would benefit from it.
And as long as you give me the verbiage what to say, which might be hard before the council votes on it, but we.
Well, I think even before we would change it, you know, like if we could get more applicants to the program now. With the idea that, hey, the town council is reviewing this, you know,
Current program.
right, apply for the current program with the expectation that, you know, we've been talking about it for a few years now, we've got a solid, you know, plan in place. So if you get your name in now, apply now, you would see this benefit in the
We
next.
can do press releases, we can do whatever. I know you're that's important. We can help HAK out, so whatever.
Yeah. Can I ask you, this is written up in the charter. Would that have to be changed before you try to implement any of this?
Well, we don't open the charter, so the actual program, it's just ordinance
It's
60.
Oh, yeah, to be ordinance, yes, that would be probably the procedural question, what could we actually send out prior to changing the ordinance? Because that's where we have to have the setting the hearing, then conducting the hearing.
But then the map of how to calculate the current benefit is all in there.
In the charter?
Yeah.
I thought it was just the ordinance in the charter.
Oh,
I didn't know if the actual calculation is in the, is in the charter or just the ordinance. Because if the calculation is in there, then this is a much bigger process because we have to open the charter.
Yeah, no,
Once
it's
you
just,
open the
yeah, no, it's just ordinance, and even, I mean, I don't know how much you want to accelerate the process, but I think even setting the hearing, if we wanted to hold a special meeting at the hearing, I don't know if that, I think even then, I don't know if that would be enough time to. If that's, yeah.
That is now gonna look.
Steve, if I might.
Yeah,
One of the things that unsettles me about making any tweak, and this was on chart 8, is I think we have a large untapped program participation. And this discussion about, we have 2 weeks
yeah,
Yeah,
when you have lemons, you make lemonade, right? So this might be an opportunity for the council to float a trial balloon at the senior center to say, if the program were retooled to have a benefit of X, who might be interested? And that could kind of give you a sense of how many people would start to stampede into this program. So before you put it in stone, the program's gonna have a benefit of X and increasing Y every year. That would allow Jason and me to kind of forecast, because right now, if the participation goes up 50%, in 10 years, the program will be at cap. 5%, you will be bankrupt. This is what I worry about, because on chart 8, you'll see these red columns, that's the unserved market. And it's a fairly sizable number.
and then,
So it could be crushed by our success.
that was actually leading to a question that was floating in my mind, is if the 0.5% is, I'm considering this scenario it's stable, but at any time in the future, we need to consider if we want to have this be a robust program, would it be necessary to, reopen the ordinance and maybe consider 0.75% instead of 0.5%, or even make it a 1% ordinance fund that 1% of the town budget. Obviously, we need to have the financial, this is obviously like
political will.
Brian's twitching over there.
Yeah,
Just little twitches every now and
I'm
then.
not saying years and years, that's why I'm saying.
No, I hear you.
You get some grounding.
I might have to throw him a cookie or
I
something.
do. One, I like the way it almost encourages residents to stay in town. But I'd like some not controls, but some supervision and sustainability in that. Let's look at it officially in some capacity every year or 2 years. And monitor, so we don't, if we see that it's ballooning, that we can make a tweak in time. I don't know when the best time or how to do that would be. Maybe that's something informal that Jason and I can do with Lisa. But you guys have any thoughts on that?
Well, your recommendation for the review is under subsection 136-23. It says the program should be reviewed by the council every 5 years or in the year following property reval. So we may want to amend that to be every 3 years or in the year following a property evaluation, so that maybe there's more periodic discussions about program versus it being basically half a census period.
Okay.
So that'd be my one recommendation is to reconsider whether or not every 5 years is reasonable or if we should adjust to 3 years, considering I think every 5 years is the revaluation period.
I can get you the official numbers, but I want to say we were in the middle of the road in comparison to Vernon, Ellington, that all have a local elderly program as well. We were in the middle of that patch of what we were doing, numbers wise, so.
Because their last revaluation was 2019, right? So then actually 2024 would be, so it'd be the year following property revaluation would be essentially if we went forward with this, made the changes this year, it'd be 2 years from now, but it would be having this discussion, so.
I'd be interested in knowing what the other towns do too. I know you had brought that to us before, but it wasn't firmed up. It was very, anecdotal, what other towns were doing.
Yeah, because there was some towns like Guilford that they have the freeze and they go crazy with this every year, and it takes 2 of them to sit down with each property and recalculate each one, and it's very similar to ours. And then talking to the assessor that was there at the time, she was like, that would be the first thing if I had my say, I would get rid of that in a heartbeat and just double the state circuit breaker and just because there's less of us in the office and there's just more things to do. There's newer ordinances every year and there's new laws that you're chasing constantly. So it's just one less thing that you have that much time to spend on to, for the benefit of your elderly, but if it's only $100, you spend a lot of time bringing in information, copying papers, giving them back, fighting the people about whether they're given to you even in the first place. So it's a lot to do. But some of the other towns that just have the defined benefit, it works very well. And they know, it's just very clear, clean.
Yeah, I think Bob used that probably Jason's time going through this whole process with the current program. He said it probably would save them about $2,000 worth of, I think he said billable hours or kind of the general salary could be redirected towards other tasks, including, I think, marketing.
Just in your, trying to analyze the impact of your mill rate change, about a week's worth of work.
The fun stuff. For me,
Yeah. Right.
I'm good.
Councilor Luba?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just have, it was just something that piqued my, pricked my ears up when we were talking about how it compounds every year. So at the first year, it's $250, and then for every year after that, $100 every year that you're approved. I've seen it before where people may forget to, is this something automatically, that automatically renews, or do they have to apply every year? And if they apply every year, if it's something, say if they miss it for a year for whatever reason, do they start back from square one or do they start where they left off?
So we talked about that today. What if somebody misses the year, they come out of the program right now, if you miss a year, whatever, you go, hey, well, we can't find you and you don't apply. It is every other year that they apply. So they would go 250, then to 350 the second year.
Mhm.
Then they would reapply in that year where it would go to 450. But if they miss it and then apply the next year, it would go back to 250. So we would start them off at the beginning of the program.
Okay, just for clarification purposes of that, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And wasn't there a provision about the town manager, if
Yes.
somebody was in the hospital or maybe had dementia and had a problem with filing, because we've had a couple, then the town manager is allowed to say, yes, we can take that application after the deadline date, so,
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
very kind of loose and formal appeal process. Write a letter to Brian. We've done a couple of them.
And that's happened a couple times over the years, but
Yes.
his office really keeps track, and then they contact us, and then I send Becky out, and we knock on people's doors, just to make sure that they reapply,
Okay. I just wanted to check on that.
contact family members.
Yeah, no, it's under subsection 136-30.1 has the review process. Yeah, so how they go through the tax assessor, request a review from the town manager and determination. Yes, that looks like a 4 or 5 point process. But I think it's mostly informal, and if it's personal situation, can be handled before it's to go much further than the first couple of steps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Are there any other questions? Counselor Khan?
Thanks for doing whatever we did with spending time. So me, my question is, my frustration is the petition. Applying for it and doing the homework and everything else. Is it 250 worth it? That's number one. Question number one is like, and George is sitting there right behind you. His income, his retired pension, whatever he's getting, that's not going up anymore. So for him, coming down over here is whatever with him, whatever the assessor office, 250 worth it. That's number one. Number two is as a town of Tolland, it's a small town. We have limited income, everything else. My only question to you is we can make money for to increase the budget, Board of Education, town, everything else. I can say that I'm moving to Tolland because of Board of Education or education my kid. On the other hand, I can say that, you know what, I'm leaving town, I'm moving to Florida, South Carolina, because I cannot afford the tax. I never heard anyone, a senior or whomever, moving to Tolland because of, they care about the senior. They have something for me. It's not the full package, it's something to appreciate. Definitely, we don't want, there are a lot of people, they live here for the rest of their life, and we don't want to say, you know what, we'll take a hike to, it's $250. What, to file it, hand piece of paper, and it's spending half an hour to whatever it is, and prove him for us, give him proof of my asset or everything else.
This is,
I don't think so, it's very much, to me, I don't think it's very much appreciated. And I don't think so, because if I were at this age, I don't think so. I'm gonna come down to town and this office and apply for $350.
I think it's a very personal,
It's nice. Okay.
in speaking with Jason, I don't think he has a single participant who is unthankful of any money that is given. So 250 will always be received with some thanks. The mean tax bill for the program participants is about $4,000. And this program right now, we're proposing would give $100 extra per year. That means that's 2.5%. It's about what the home would appreciate if it were an average home. Is it worth it? Yeah, because what we're trying to do is mimic a tax base. by and large, I think the elderly in town are proud. They're not looking for handouts. I mean, that was the original premise of the program as to why we wanted to make it a tax freeze. Is it a windfall? Absolutely not. I said earlier, getting old is not for sissies, because every one of us, if we're lucky, will be old. Every one of us will be facing huge financial crushing stress, mainly from healthcare. Lose a spouse, you lose a third of your income. Those are the realities. So I think anything you can do for, and I'm editorializing, anything you can do for the elderly who have the lowest demand on services, who have in large part because they've been here lifetime, built this town. Is it worth it? Yeah, I think anything we can do. The other balance is there's working families. Median income in town is for a household is $115,000. So can you give more? You'd love to. But you also have to think about the families who are working and struggling to make ends meet too. This is 0.5% of the budget.
I think my, as you said, there's a personal, yes, it is a little bit personal because on 195 and by Big Y, there's a guy, he's there almost 7 days a week. And I think he makes a little bit more than a couple $100 a day because he's sitting over there right in the corner and everybody give him $1 or $2. I think he makes in one day more than 250 compared to $250 per year. Rather go to Big Y and work an hour, about an hour a day. I think you'll make more money rather than come and spend some time with him. That's my opinion. And I don't think so that's the right thing to do for our senior because they've been paying their taxes for almost their life. And it's about time that, you know what, let's start taking care of them rather than tell them that, you know what, take it back in hand. Excuse my language, but yes. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor Khan. Any other questions? Councilor Nuccio?
So following up on that, I'm trying to, you said something that kind of was key to me. If you're trying to mirror the tax freeze. And if I'm thinking about this from the perspective of, I hit that age, I enter into the program, that $250, if I think of the average tax increase that we've thrust upon the people of this town in the last 6 years that I've been sitting on this board. You know, so many people like to throw around the cup of coffee a day line, which is absolutely bogus when you put it on top of everything else. If I think about the freeze though, $250 is probably around the average house, average tax increase that we see. I know, like I said, I have 66 raised ranch and I know mine is more than a $250 increase every time we raise the taxes. But a more modest tone, the $250 may actually be that freeze in that year, but with the next year, I guess I'm thinking compounding that. With the next year, if you only get 100, taxes go up $225, they get 100, you know, they're still gonna have an increase. Is there any thought to, because when you and I have talked in the past, I've always had in my mind, tax freezes the day you enter it, you're not gonna pay more than, you know, if my taxes are $4,000, then for the next 20 years, my taxes are gonna be $4,000. But I know, Jason, when you came in, you said that's not how it's working, because every time the house appreciates, it changed that number. So they would be paying more. You know, I was thinking of it as like a mill rate freeze, that, you know, your mill rate was never gonna change based on the value of your home. So in this case, was there any thought to, how does that $100 play out against the average tax increase that we're seeing? And are they gonna continue to have higher tax burden every year after year one than not. I'm doing the math, Bob. I'm doing the math.
I understand that, Tim, and there was a lot of thought, and gosh, I wish you came in early when I was giving my
I'm so
best.
sorry.
If you could take this offline, I could.
We could, you know, we
Chart-
debate anyway, so,
Chart 4 speaks volumes to me.
okay.
As I said to Sammy, $100, that's 2.5% for the mean tax bill of $4,000. But if you look at this line through, which one? I thought it was chart 4.
You're good. That was it.
Yeah, the way it's
That one.
benefit.
I guess I'm looking at two different versions. But you'll see, the blue line is the average.
That one's,
Yeah,
that one's gross.
the green line is what if we were to do the 250 plus 100. But look at the average and look at the number of households
That are underneath it.
that are way underneath it. So I would caution the council when you say, oh, my house did this. I have an average house. These are people not living in average homes. They are not making the necessary repairs and maintenance of their home to have their property value appreciate.
Yeah,
So
Jason.
many
got me
people
for
who
my
got in
block.
this program, their
Look at it.
homes are actually worth less than they were 20 years ago.
Yeah,
And for that reason, trying to peg a benefit to a tax freeze based on mill rate and property valuation is a disservice to those people most in need. Have we given it a lot of thought? Oh, yeah, we have.
I know you guys have. I'm not trying to discount that. I know this has taken well over a year, right, to dig through and try to find the best, and I absolutely have faith that you guys have
Well,
done the
we
digging.
took your comments to heart from a year ago and did kind of a deep dive on the 155 participants to understand what happened to their property
Yeah,
over those years.
that's interesting.
That's kind of, and in that chart, you can kind of see that.
And all of these
When I-
people for lower would be bumped up. No.
Yes, everybody would be brought up to the same level. So when I say we're trying to come up with something that mimics a tax freeze if everybody had an average house and they were doing the necessary repairs. So it's a tax freeze and then some
And then,
in a perfect world.
okay,
The benefit is also over time is to go down without necessarily losing participants, but because the values went down. The benefit is a direct calculation of
it's a
what,
richer benefit based off the value.
yeah, what your original benefit was, and now. It's less of a benefit, even though you're paying the same taxes. You don't ever see that benefit because your burden is just less than it would have been. Now you're paying the same amount you paid last year because that's where we froze you. But you lose some benefit even though there's no, that benefit doesn't really exist. It's just a number so we can make sure that we're not over our threshold. That benefit sometimes skews what's actually happening.
And I'm sure that you guys said this and I missed it, and again, I'm very sorry, but can this also be combined with the veterans benefit or any other tax abatement programs that we have? You can still partner this up and use it with others.
Those are a function of the assessment. So it's an assessment reduction for those. The circuit breaker is a credit. These are the only ones that are credits. That's not true. Lines a credit. So there's a few that are credits, direct credits, so it works with everything that's already in place.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor Nuccio. Let's see, so I think it was a really rough conversation, a lot of good recommendations. I think we can move forward to direct the town manager to work with Jason, Bob, Bev, and maybe get some recommended language for adjustments to ordinance 60 to put up next meeting to set the hearing. They'll be on the 9th, and then the 23rd will be the second meeting of the month. We'll conduct the hearing and go through the process. So just want to, again, thank you, Bob, thank you, Jason, Bev, and him as well, because she provides some commentary as well for services. And again, condolences, Bob, and thank you for making me that excited to be with us.
You're very welcome. And thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. Brings us to item 8.2, appointments to vacancies on various district boards and commissions. We have none, but we want to thank, I believe, Councilor Luba and was conducting an interview for another vacancy, so we should hopefully have one down the line, perhaps in the near future. That brings us to 10 or 9 old business, if you have none. 10, report of the town manager. Any updates between your last report and this one?
Yeah, I worked with, thank you, Mr. Chair. I worked with Chuck and got a good look at the green proposal for the walkway, the ADA walkway and disabled veterans access area to the monument. And just some minor tweaks, so that should be finalized fairly soon. Let me just run down my review here really quick. Farmers market is sprinting along, and I imagine it to be very successful. I'm very happy with how it's going. Much thanks to the Ag Commission and the PCC, as well as Dave Cochran and Megan, our grants person, for we're going after grant money for advertising for that event. You know, we might buy us a banner, one banner for now, and then a second one through the grant. At that point, just because of the way the timing's working out. And that's all I have. The DOT bridge in town, they're gonna close it for 4 months. There's nothing I can do. I got some concessions on the DOT. But I understand how it works. And that's up by Country Butcher, and not this summer, but next summer.
2 quick questions. I know I said one and I know Chief is on, so that they may be able to answer part of the question was the status of the ladder truck. That we were able to trim off some of the capital or the debt service.
The stars at night are big and bright with our ladder truck deep in the heart of Texas. Chief Lytle, do you want to give them an update on it? I don't know if you're talking here muted.
I'll ask him to unmute. If he's available.
That's all right. So the ladder truck,
There he is.
okay.
He should get muted now.
John, you give an update.
So I gave Brian a quick update of where we are and a kind of a snapshot timeline. I know it seems like it's been a little while. But obviously, we started looking, we informed the council and the town manager March 14th. We entered, a purchase order probably about a week or 2 after that. They made several huge additional repairs at no cost to the town. With a lot of air cylinders, breathing apparatus, window seals, and a bunch of other things that they did at no cost. But obviously they're having some problems with some items that we asked for refurb, similar to some of you had asked what we're gonna do. And there's some things that we'd like to change or do some refurbs while it's at a Pierce dealer. So the first quote came in, obviously way too high, significant money. So I didn't even bring that to Brian yet. So I informed Brian of it. I am waiting for the second quote to come in, revised as far as some items that we'd like to look at or possibly explore. And as soon as that gets here, I'll sit down with Brian to go over those recommendations. And then anywhere after we approval of that, it could still be about a 2-month or so time frame before they get the recommendations that we'd like to have done. And with the approval that Brian approves to get done. Because we still have to look at the shipping costs as well. So trying to look at that, all the line items, but obviously we know we can't go over that 750. Obviously, we'd like to stay way underneath that. So as soon as I get the second redraft for the estimate for what we'd like to look at, we'll sit down with Brian and go over it. Obviously, a ladder test needs to be done down there if we change cables or stuff like that, but everything else has been done. And I probably will sit down with Brian in the next week or 2 to show him the photos and what items. And so he has a kind of a view on it and then look for his recommendation and approval to move forward. So that's kind of where we are there. The good thing is the current ladder that we currently operate did pass a ladder test 2 weeks ago. So when we go to sell that, at least it has a current ladder test and is up to date with stuff with the DOT inspection and the ladder testing.
All right, thank you, Chief. And then other question probably for more Brian is obviously there was an incident a week or so ago that required public safety, public works, departments. I'm just curious if an update on that, if everything is good to go. I know it sounds like it got capped pretty quickly by, I think, our local company.
62 Merrill Road, yes, the
Yep.
incident with the sewer break and other septic related issues there. We have tracked all the spending to include Chief Lytle on his staff and Director Lappin and his staff, as well as the emergency call out of a construction company. Everything has been tallied and delivered to Rick Conti, as well as all our staff did thorough reports as to their involvement, to include our economic development director, Director Lappin, and Jim Paquin in buildings, and Chief Lytle. All extensive reports, all have also been forwarded to Rick. The next step will likely be he'll put a billing, he'll begin the billing process to the contractor's insurance company.
Thank you.
And it's capped, they're moving towards connecting to the sewer system properly.
Okay. All right, are any other questions for Brian? All right, seeing none, we'll move to item 11, adoption of minutes. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the minutes as laid out in 11.1 to 11.3.
So moved.
So by Counselor Luba, second by Counselor Murray. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Item 12, correspondence, council.
There were 3 emails that came in since March 12th. One about dump trucks and 2 about the budget.
Thank you. That brings us to 12 or 13 chairperson's report. Agenda communication to town manager's office. We're going to cancel next Wednesday's chair hour in lieu of having the joint meeting at the firehouse on the 17th. So we'll be working on promotion material for that, but that'll get updated and e-blasted out to encourage folks to go to that. Lining up folks to come from each board and commission, so people can meet there and discuss. Obviously, send an invitation to Mr. Foley as well. So there'll be a CROG meeting tomorrow. There's some general business being conducted and a few action items. And I did receive a letter from the Department of Veteran Affairs regarding some of the items that Councilor Luba's brought in his requests and communications. So kind of refers to those same topics of the VRC and our role with them and changing of some state statutes. So I think included with that letter, it's also the page from state statutes of, it was section 27-135, local veterans advisory committee and municipal veterans representatives. So we'll hopefully move forward with that and get ourselves in compliance with state statute. And that is it for me. So I'll move to,
In regards to that,
yes.
there has definitely been a focus on that at the state level. And the budget as it currently stands has people in it that are gonna be directly overseeing the fact that a lot of towns are not in compliance with that. And looking to ensure that going forward, there is full compliance with the state regulations in regards to the veteran services of the town. So I think we should probably try to get in line with that as quick as possible.
Are we not in compliance?
I think you have to provide space, resources and stuff like that. I would suggest that we look at exactly what
We had our
have to
attorney
do.
look at it. He said we were in compliance.
We are, okay.
Yes, according to Conti.
Okay, so I would just, double check, make sure that we're all good with that.
Thank you, Councilor Nuccio. All right, that brings us to 14, which is communications and petitions from council members.
I have a question in regard to the mill rate post passing of the budget. One of the things that's in the current budget that is one of the things that we all agree on all sides is the hold harmless for towns for ECS. Hoping that that's gonna stick through. It's one of my top priorities in the budget. And if that holds, that means Tolland will not lose $185,617, I think, in ECS reduction. I'm asking what is, right now, our current policy is if something like that happens, it goes into the tax stabilization fund. But I'm wondering if there is any appetite or ability to look at an actual adjustment of the mill rate post the election. We set the mill rate. I know it usually is set within a couple of weeks of the budget. And the state budget, if we're lucky, will pass before June 7th. But if that comes through, and that happens, that would be a save of $185,000 on the revenue side. Is there the ability to adjust the mill rate down?
Lisa?
I believe so. At least
Hi there, that's a problem. It depends on when all this happens. Because once the tax bills goes out, we have the tax warrant that has to be signed. The software has to be updated and all that for the new tax rate. Adjusting the tax rate, after you've set everything becomes quite complicated to do. I think I understand what you're asking. It's like, we'll set a mill rate after the budget is passed. But then if we find out a month or two after, can we adjust the mill rate? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, well, it will be well before July, right? If we're lucky and we pass the budget, we agree on a budget and we pass the budget by the June 7th deadline. We don't typically do the budget on the last day of session, but if we pass that sooner and we know that ECS is going to be frozen, is there the ability to basically adjust the mill rate and have a lower mill rate?
It would become very difficult and it would actually become costly, depending on how it's done. Because so much happens as soon as that referendum is completed, then everything starts spinning as far as the assessor's office, getting the elderly credits, everything moving, and then getting everything into the tax office, getting it to quality data services. There's a lot involved and very little time right after that mill rate is passed. So I would not recommend doing that. The other option to consider, which we've done in the past, again, it could be very costly, is to adjust the second bill of the year that is billed out in January to maybe account for a differential. But again, that requires special software, probably costs about, I think, between $5,000 or $10,000 to do it. And with the staffing shortages that we're dealing with right now in the tax office and things that are going on, it would really create a challenge. We have the ordinance in place. I understand where you're coming from regarding, let's not overtax people, and I understand that. We can make things happen, but it's going to be quite a challenge to do. And I don't think we could do it for the July 1st billing. It would have to be later on, and it will cost money. Now you're telling me that they're not going to, we cut that budget amount by $175,000 or right around that, whatever the governor's number gave us. Are you telling me that they're just going to hold it level again and not cut that?
That's currently in the budget.
We cut the budget by 100 from, what we were going to get by, I think it was about
185.
No, it wasn't 185. It's like 173, 175, something like that. It was whatever the governor had given us for the number. That's the number that we put in the budget for ECS. Hello? I lost you.
No, we're still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Right now,
don't have the budget book with me, but that, yeah, I know it was in the 170 something range. But in any event, whether it's 185, 175, we've reduced the budget by that amount from the current year of what we have budgeted. And I just want to understand what you're telling me is that they may not reduce it at all.
Currently, the budget has,
Wonderful.
currently the budget is holding towns who are losing money harmless. So there is no intent to lower the ECS for the next 2 years in the budget. If that manages to stay in,
Uh-huh.
then yes, we would not see that reduction.
Well, I mean, there are things we can do. If we could look at the timing. Okay, once we get the information, we can look at the timing as to when the mill rate is set and to when the bills have to go out. We would have to have a special council meeting, of course, to create, if you're changing that mill rate. Like I said, there's a lot involved once that's all approved. The other thing, either way, the other thing is just having to pay, add money to the budget to redo the software like we had to do last time and rebill. And you have to send out new bills, everything else. It's quite involved.
All right,
So this is a little point of informational purposes. So section 9-7 of the charter offers the council up to 10 days after the budget referendum passes to set the mill rate. So that's what we're required under. So that would be the second is the referendum. So the 12th, I think, then would it be the absolute hard thing to set that at a special meeting, which trying to get what day of week that even is, but since town halls goes on a Friday, I would assume probably it's gonna be the following Thursday, probably be the absolute latest, which would be the, 10th or 11th, but yeah, so that is, so not very likely, at least under the charter. All right, any other communications or additions?
I was gonna say, I remember years ago, I think that same question got brought up.
we changed the mode, yeah, when we.
Yeah, it's like 2017 or,
Deal,
yeah.
the same idea, I think Lisa was saying is mail up the difference, but that just like Lisa said, it was just too costly, so. But I was just. Commentary, that's all. Yeah.
Thank you. That's all right.
Yeah, if more ECS money is coming in, does the council have the ability after the budget is passed to send that money to the Board of Ed?
It's still a loss in ECS. It's just less of a loss. So it's not more ECS. If it was more ECS, we are legally required to provide that to the Board of Ed. But because it's still a loss, it is not. It's a revenue offset.
It's not a loss, it's the hold harmless means we get the same amount as last year.
Right, so it's not more. The only, if you can check with the state on that. The only time the town council is required to send ECS differential to the Board of Ed is when they're gaining.
I'm not asking about a requirement, I'm asking if we get more ECS money than we have budgeted for, can the council send additional increase the budget for the Board of Education after the budget passes referendum and the mill rate is set by the council?
Currently, our regulation is no. It goes to the tax stabilization.
Right, you asked if we could do something outside of what the current regulation is, and I'm asking the same question, just using it in a different way, that's all.
Yeah, I think it's a 75-25 between
Tax
tax and
stabilization
CRE.
and CNRE, yeah.
I don't know. Can you answer that question?
What question is that?
If we get more ECS money than we've currently budgeted, and the referendum passes, and the mill rate is set by the council, can the council vote to move that unexpected money to the Board of Education's budget?
The only definition that I've read in the charter is the one he mentioned that it goes to tax stabilization and CNRE.
Okay.
So my guess would be no. That's a guess without reviewing that specific part of the charter. I specifically remember tax stabilization, CNRE, and that's it. But apparently we've been able to adjust the mill rate in the past, but I completely knew you would ask that.
Right.
It's logical that both sides would want that somewhere. I think that's probably why the.
That's why we have the ordinance, but that was, when we adjusted the mill rate, it was prior to the ordinance. the ordinance came in. My question is more in relation to like if it was before we set the mill rate kind of thing, because we put the mill rate on the budget question, but we're not required to, because nobody's voting on the mill rate. They're voting on the budget. We have to set the mill rate after. So there was that 1 year, as Colleen said, we found out about the ECS, we set the mill rate different than what the original budget had, because we found out about it prior to, because you don't vote on revenue. With the town budget, you're voting on the spend, the budget spend, the expense spend. So we changed, they had the ability to change the mill rate because you don't vote on a mill rate. But past the mill rate setting, then we have the policy for the tax stabilization and the CNRE. I don't have hopes though that we're gonna pass the budget before May 12. But
Yeah.
is it 10 business days or is it just 10 calendar?
I think it's the calendar. I think,
I know.
like, let's look at check. Yeah.
Yeah,
It just says 10 days, so I assume,
It
I was 10 days, calendar, not business,
It
so,
doesn't make a difference.
yeah.
The budget isn't getting, the state budget isn't getting passed before June 1st. Just my.
Yeah.
That can be your date. You pick
Stay in, there's a.
No.
That's not-
Certainly happening in that day.
Oh, like we could probably, let's bet a Reese's on that, like, which way it's gonna go. Plus or minus 24 hours.
Yeah.
All right. Any other communications or petitions?
No.
All right, item 15, Lou, public participation, would you like to?
No, I just-
All right. No, I got you. George?
Anybody else? Okay.
I usually let the audience in person go first, and then if anybody online, I'll give them a chance.
Okay. Still George Overage, Game Road. First question is, after the gentleman got done with their presentation, why wasn't it opened up so that we could have questions? I already started forgetting some of my questions. I started writing them down, and I can't read my own writing, so I would like to know why, after they were done with their thing, before they.
So at this point in the process, it's generally it's sort of a business item between the council and the invited speaker, so it would be different than, say, when we had the public hearing just now about the fire rates. That's where we have the initial discussion, we have the presentation of the manager, and at that point, we open up the floor to public participation. So in this particular instance with the ordinance 60, the process that would be going forward is we would set the public hearing in May, and then at the end of May have the hearing. And at that point is when a lot of information will go out, you'll get the notice to the JI, and that's the prime opportunity to have that Q&A feedback. But also, I know you don't use email a lot, but that's also an opportunity that the public can send us emails about public hearing item once the date is set. That gets incorporated into our minutes, so if there's any feedback there. But yeah, that's just general procedure for the business meeting.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
I think, George, the other thing is that this was more of a concept that we were presented with today. And in order for us to even consider something, we have to have it really written out, right? So the next step that Steve asked for was for the town manager to provide us with a draft of the updated ordinance. Which we didn't get today because this was more of a concept, so.
And I could put my 2 cents in.
And
You'll have your chance.
you will have
Absolutely.
multiple chances to give us your input. You could give it to us now too, but you will have more.
Well, I'm going to, I haven't even got it.
Yeah, this won't count against your time.
But
You're good.
they're very approachable.
Yeah, but everybody else.
Yeah, no,
Okay. So-
What you wrote and where you wrote it?
Tonight, when, what? First question is, I would assume this program ends when the house is sold.
Yes.
Now, is this somebody's maxed in or whatever, they die, move away, whatever, it ends? Okay. So, another thing, is, I don't like filling out forms all the time. Why do we have to reapply every year? And whatever, I get the bill every year from my taxes, I pay my taxes. Doesn't that kind of assume that I'm still alive
Well, some people's financial situations could change. And so.
for the better?
Very.
When you're like 75, 85 years old, for the better? And they have to get married if I get worse. So, all right, so that's one of the things I wanted to know is why, because it seems like such a, no, I'll just come in and can I just sign an affidavit? Yeah, I'm the same person. I feel better off than last year. Another thing is, we're worried about this thing, running out of money and stuff. See, nobody here probably realizes, but see, I'm going through like a foundation problem. I'm wondering if I'm still gonna be here at the end. You guys are not worried about next year, the year after, whatever. I'm worried about tomorrow. So I think this thing is gonna, if it's been going on for over 20 years already. Haven't some of those original people all dropped off already, moved away or died? So I don't think it's ever gonna balloon way out of proportion. That it's ever gonna cost the town a whole heck of a lot of money. So it's just one of my things. And I forget half the other things, but I was just wondering why I couldn't get in and put my 2 cents in while I was still having the discussion. And Steve is some of my questions.
No,
Thank you.
of course, and I certainly invite you, I know Mr. Rubino and Mr. Wise are still in the back, so if any of them come back to mind, I'm sure they could definitely provide additional insight on the program proposal.
Okay.
But everything's online, so you can always review it online.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He's not.
Realize it, yeah, I just.
I know.
I just had to run to the credit union yesterday, I thought my credit card died, but luckily it wasn't. I mean, how stupid is our system that I opened up a CD. And now, a week later, I get a thing from the credit union saying, oh, your change of address, and we sent one to your old address and your new address, and goes. I ain't moved nowhere in 29 years, and I've lived in town my whole life. Let's just change the address crap. I go raising down here, somebody stole my card. No, it's not that. For whatever reason, somebody left off the last 4 digits of my zip code. So that's a change of address. Now we got a 5 digit instead of a 9. Why it went backwards, I don't know. But they send out all this mailing to let me know that my address has been changed. I hate computers and.
It's just getting worse, George. AI, it's just getting worse.
I know.
All right, is there anyone online that would like to participate? You can hit the raise hand function or star 9. All right. Going once, going twice, I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:59 PM. So moved by Councilman Nuccio. Is there a second?
Somebody seconded.
Seconded by Councilman Yudichak. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye. You're unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.